Joining us now to discuss is Denise Gitsham, NewsNation political contributor, former aide to President George W. Bush and Republican strategist. Always a pleasure to see you, Denise. And what a night to regroup. Good heavens. This came in just moments ago. We're still digesting it on our end. We have this update now from Pakistan's prime minister. The concern, as you know, Denise, with any potential deal with Iran is any deal viable? And when we chatted last, we talked about the importance of Americans feeling that this deal or any deal the president hammers out is better than the JCPOA. So what will it have to include as a result?
Well, first of all, Kelly, I mean, the fact that this is coming on the president's birthday, I mean, is this not a made-for-TV moment? And I'm so honored to be here talking with you about it as it breaks. I'm so excited. Every freedom-loving person should be celebrating the potential of what this announcement means. Because if, in fact, this is something that can extend beyond this 60-day sort of MOU, this almost letter of intention to try to build on the basis of a peace, framework, then this means everything shifts in the Middle East. This means that the way the international community engages in the Strait of Hormuz and helping us clear those mines, this means that even the official acknowledgement by the IRGC or whoever's controlling Iran, because nobody really knows for sure right now, even the official acknowledgement that there has to be a give and take, which really hasn't come consistently from them, is now established in writing. It's something they've agreed to. So what this does is it gives legitimacy to what the president is trying to achieve, both at home and in the international community. And what it will need to do is do exactly what the president said it will do, which is to have a viable way, a test-worthy way, a trust but verify kind of way to ensure that Iran never, ever gets the ability to rebuild its nuclear ambitions.
Right. And, we know the devil will be in the details in all of this. And there's still much to discuss in this 60-day period. But, this conflict, as we've talked about, Denise, it's had a major impact on the cost of fuel. It's contributing to market uncertainty. When we consider the midterms, is there still time on the clock in your mind for the president to button this up one way or the other? Will we see things begin to stabilize, potentially with a framework of a deal agreed upon here?
Well, I hope so, because I'm a Republican, and I hope that the president is able to help all Americans get back to a cost of living that honestly was elevated before he came into office and will probably remain elevated. They're not going to suddenly plummet, right? This isn't a quick fix. And also, this isn't an enduring peace deal yet. This is just the beginning steps of a framework. And so I think that we need to be more focused as Americans on what this actually means for us in the long term. Every generation is asked to give up or sacrifice something, right? The greatest generation said, we will give our lives for freedom and to protect future generations from having to deal with the threat that comes to our doorstep. What are we willing to sacrifice? Is it another $1 in gas prices, or $2, or if you're in California, $4 in increase for a short term in order to gain the long-term potential of keeping that threat that Iran poses at bay and keeping that World War III from precipitating? And that's a question every American has to ask themselves, because that is the existential threat of our moment, is what Iran could possibly do to tip off World War III. And we have to be willing to endure and sacrifice in the near term to get that long-term peace agreement in place and established with the support of the international community, hopefully finally coalescing around our efforts.
Yeah, and so many have said that has to be the message from the president for the Americans, American buy-in in all of this. I wanted to play a clip, Denise, from earlier today. Pete Hegseth was on another network. This is what he had to say about some of the verification that has to be included in any deal.
You'll have inspections, you'll have oversight, whether they're U.S., whether they're international, but it'll be a throttle set by the United States through our negotiators with the military and strength as the guarantor of this.
Are you saying that at the negotiating table, the United States is going to say the U.S. military has to go in and clean up the nuclear dust?
Well, I'm not going to say on a Sunday morning television program what we will or will not do in any context. We'll have all options on the table.
So, of course, the administration working to keep, the element of surprise. They don't want to blow these discussions. Denise, what do you believe that verification process has to look like? Because that will be the central focus now. How do we ensure any deal is carried out and is viable?
Well, I think an international presence must be established. It has to be more than just the United States or our ally Israel or any one of our other allies, right? It has to be some coalition of international agents that truly have a vested interest in seeing peace prevail and be maintained and keeping that nuclear weapon from ever getting in the hands of Iran. This is such a departure, I want to point out, from what we had under Obama with the JCPOA, where Iran, the global leading state sponsor of terror, got to determine for itself and for others when and where the verification would be done. And they got money before any actual good faith efforts were shown by them. It was all carrot and no stick. So this is light years ahead of what anything that Obama and his team proposed. It's actually the reason I jumped in to run for Congress in 2016. It's because what I saw the Democrats doing to give all this money and all this good faith that was never even earned by the Iranians in advance of any actual effort to prove that themselves to the world that they were good faith actors, which we know they are not. And this president knows that they are not. And we are not going into this with our hands tied. I guarantee you, whatever the ending turns out to be, there will be no deal if verifying is not part of that trust equation.
Yeah, and the president has said, in recent hours, no dust, no dollars. We're not going to be lifting any sanctions. We're not going to be unfreezing any assets. And there has been a lot of, concern about unfreezing any of the assets, even with a deal on the table, because while sanctions may be able to be lifted, providing any dollars, there's a real concern that the regime will just work to build up militarily once again. How does the president now walk this tightrope?
Well, I mean, that's well above my pay grade, right? But I'm so glad there are really smart people who know how to ensure that all the things that we are putting forth and saying, this is the conditions upon which you get to be at the table again, that you get to even be considered, just even what you want to offer to the international community and to us to keep us from obliterating you militarily. This is something, all of those factors that we are going to put into place, again, by people far smarter than me, thank God, are going to say, this is not something we're rolling the dice on. We did not go through all this pain for the last few months and put the Americans through all this pain for nothing. This is going to have to come to a conclusion that is satisfactory to us. We are the one dictating the terms. And it is true, it is an actual fact that Iran is at its weakest point militarily and really politically. It has very few friends. You haven't seen even China really stepping up other than to give them, backdoor money and probably munitions to help them fund their fights. But this is really sort of the last straw of the Iranians, and they have no other option. You saw how quickly they capitulated and came to the table to sign this peace deal that we've been waiting for months when we threatened to actually go for it and end them once and for all. They understand the threat, I believe, and that's probably all they'll respond to. So we need to keep the pressure on them and not just say, hey, let's hope that you show up and why don't you be a good faith actor when we know that they're not.
Right. And the president did just post on Truth Social. We've had it on the screen. I'll read it here. The deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. Congratulations to all. I hereby fully authorize the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz and simultaneously herewith authorize the immediate removal of the United States naval blockade. Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow. Oh, wow. President Donald J. Trump. So, Denise, we very, very optimistic sentiment from the president there. And as you know, we've got the G7 summit this week. The president expected to discuss plans to demine the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
So,
and not alone, Kelly, with the UK and France leading effort, which is such an important political point geopolitically. It's not just us doing all the work now. Once we establish this framework, a lot of other countries, I think South Korea and Japan and a couple of others said, we're going to jump in because they are far more dependent on that oil than we are.
And, this has been so many years, so much consternation up to this point. This is a considerable checkpoint, but you would imagine these conversations over the next 60 days are going to be intensive. Where do you see the biggest stumbling blocks up ahead?
I think the worst stumbling block, I guess I should say, is who's in charge of Iran. Right? Like what we've noticed is that we don't really know who we can count on. Is it the people who are showing up diplomatically and saying we want a peace deal? Or is it the IRGC, which is a revolutionary force that has declared war on America for decades now, right? They continue to call us the great Satan and Israel the little Satan. Their goal is destruction. And so we have to recognize that even if we're able to sit with a clear-minded sort of forward peaceful thinking, I don't even know what you call them, but the more peaceful elements of Iran's political leadership, there's always that reactionary faction at home that we have to work together with an international community that has repeatedly said that they are not legitimate, that they are a leading global state sponsor of terror. We have to get that pressure of the international community to join with us. And Iran's really helped us in that regard, because by firing on their Gulf region Arab states, they've turned people who might have been their friends into enemies, people aligned with us and Israel, which is unbelievable historically, right? To see that alignment come behind Israel and the US to say no more. No more of this nonsense. And I expect them to step up and do their job, or this really won't become something other than just a wishful thought.
Right. And there have been some creative ways, the president has tackled all of this to sort of double down on that sentiment, Denise. He used the treasury of foreign assets in ways that have never been used before. Those seized Iranian assets, giving them to Gulf allies to recover from damages they've experienced militarily. So they're coming up with some creative solutions to sort of form an alliance here. How do you see the discussions now? Because U.S. military force in this region, the thought that we're going to go back in with our might, that is not popular here in the U.S. So how does the president navigate that now? Because we still do need to get the point across that we will use a heavy hand if needed.
Well, I think what you said is right on the point, Kelly, just by pointing out the economic sanctions, the continued squeezing, because what we did is we bled Iran dry by not allowing them to sell their oil, which was the vast majority of where their coffers were refilled, how they were able to fund their remilitarization. We basically squeezed all of that off and said no more. And that's something that nobody has ever been able to do before. It was a brilliant move on the president's part and Secretary Bessent's part. And we need to keep those screws in place to say, look, you can do what you need to do to save face at home. You can say what you want to say, but if we see anything we don't like, that hammer is coming right back down and you are going to feel that pain once again. And that's the only thing they respond to is force. And so we have to keep those sort of forceful, that rope sitting right there and saying you can hang yourself or you can show up and be a semi-responsible actor, and hopefully, cooler heads will prevail.
What do you believe the conversations will look like this week when the president does go to the G7 summit? What absolutely has to be accomplished during these meetings in your mind, Denise?
Well, I wouldn't put it past the president to do one of his internet meme famous dances when he steps into that G7, because look, this was a huge victory. This is a victory for America. Put the president aside, take politics out of it. Nobody has ever had the gall or the strength or the willingness, the fortitude, the political fortitude to put what was politically popular at home aside and do what was in the best interest of Americans. And anyone who denies that is denying reality. They're denying the fact that, if they're upset that they saw what Iran could do with, without a nuclear weapon, imagine what they would have seen if Iran had had a nuclear weapon, imagine how much they would control the Strait of Hormuz then. And so everyone has seen, basically Iran showed its cards, right? It showed the world what they were willing to do to act in a terroristic way to control international waters and try to extract, billions of dollars from an international community in a totally illegitimate way. Now that we've seen that, and now that they've turned on their own Gulf region former allies and maybe neutral parties, everyone sees that they are not respectable or dependable allies or even people that we can treat as if they were rational actors. And so I expect the president to walk in declaring victory, and everyone who's fair-minded should agree with him.
All right. Well, Denise, what a moment to have you on. Certainly grateful.
I'm so honored to be here.
For you to bring your expertise to have this conversation with us right out of the gate. Always a pleasure, Denise. Denise Gitsham. Thank you.
Great to see you, Kelly.
Great.